Welcome to Door County Stories. In each episode of this series, we'll hear the stories of various Door County residents, all told in their own words.
Some may be familiar, or you may be encountering them for the first time, but they all make up the vast mosaic of people who live in our community and help make Door County such a unique and interesting place to live.
All of the people you'll meet in this series have their own distinctive and individual stories to tell.
In each episode, after our introduction, their voice is the only voice you will hear. In this episode, we're talking to Jerod Santek, the Executive Director of Write On Door County. Since arriving in the county, Jerod has brought fantastic workshops and writers to the area, including the National Poet Laureate, Tracy K. Smith. He is also an enthusiastic collaborator with other arts organizations in Door County. We are very excited to present our interview with Jerod Santek from February.
So I am the artistic director at Write On Door County, an organization that started in 2013. I originally came as the executive director, but I told our founding board at that time that in an ideal world, we wouldn't have an executive director, we would have a managing director and an artistic director, and I would be the artistic director because I can't handle spreadsheets and I can't do math. So 2 years ago, they did add a managing director position, and I have been very happy being able to focus solely on the artistic part of my job. And you know, what I do professionally really is what I'm passionate about. So the question is really one and the same to me. I would like to have more outside passions. I do enjoy our garden, and I especially enjoy watching my husband do all of the gardening, and I just get to enjoy it. So prior to coming to Door County to start Write On Door County, I was the program director at the Loft Literary Center in Minneapolis. I started there in 1994 as I think the position was called events assistant at that time. We were located in what had been an old elementary school, and a large part of the event assistant job was setting up the folding chairs in what had been the school gymnasium and was still used as a gym by the community center that the school had become. So after a youth basketball game, about a half hour after the basketball game ended, I was setting up chairs for readings and other programs. The position quickly evolved until my final title when I left was Senior Director for Artistic Development. And this was in the days like they couldn't give you raises, so they just gave you a longer title. And that's what I ended up being. But it was great work. And as part of that position, I was appointed to the board of the Association of Writers and Writing Programs to represent writers' conferences and centers. So I became familiar with a lot of writers' centers, nonprofit writing centers, and conferences around the country. And that really helped me in figuring out how to start a new organization, because it was, 2013, it was a scary time to be starting a new nonprofit organization, but that background and those connections helped a great deal. I'm so often asked if that I must miss a lot of things from Minneapolis living here in Door County. I live in Sturgeon Bay, and I don't really miss much about Minneapolis. I think culturally there is as much to do here in Door County as I did in Minneapolis. I'm happy to be in walking distance from downtown Sturgeon Bay, so I can walk to the restaurants and shops there. I can walk down to Third Avenue Playhouse to see a production and have a drink afterwards and not have to worry about driving home. So it's just perfect for me. There isn't much that I miss about Minneapolis, but what I do miss is, and this will be sound very silly, but I miss the olive bars at the Kowalski's and Lund's grocery stores in Minneapolis. And being a vegetarian, it was much easier for me to find vegetarian products in Minneapolis than it is here. But Healthy Way has been a great godsend to me, so it's all good. And I guess what has surprised me most about living here is that that people don't like to drive to other parts of the county. When I was visiting here, I thought one of the great joys was driving all around the county and exploring the villages and that. And then when I moved here, people said, "Oh my God, you live in Sturgeon Bay and you work up in Juddville? You do that drive every day?" Well, it's about, what, a 20-mile drive. It takes 20 to 30 minutes to drive up there, and it's a beautiful drive. In Minneapolis, I probably lived about 4 miles from the loft, and it would take me 45 minutes to an hour to get to work, and it wasn't pretty, and it was stressful. So I love it here, and I'm surprised that people don't like to drive. You know, people up north won't drive down to Sturgeon Bay for an event, or people in Sturgeon Bay won't go up to Fish Creek on, you know, just rare occasions. So that was my big surprise. You know, I have to say, even before the pandemic, we didn't go out to eat much. We both my husband and I love to cook, and when we would go out to eat, it would always be breakfast or lunch usually. And when we were visiting here, we always made our last breakfast at the inn at Cedar Crossing. So we always enjoyed that, and that became part of our tradition of visiting Door County. But even when we were visiting, we would rent a cabin which had a large kitchen, wonderful kitchen, and we just loved to cook. So we didn't go out much. But I think, you know, the hidden gems in Door County are really discovering the back roads and driving down all the roads that most tourists would probably never turn onto. And it's just so many lovely views and just such a beautiful area. When my sister and niece first visited, my sister, they were coming from the Pittsburgh area. My sister just looked at me and was like, "There's so much open land here. What do you do with all this space?" And enjoy it, appreciate it. Yeah, it has been a difficult year, and I guess I'm in an oddly comfortable position with this pandemic. Being something of an introvert myself, and my husband and I are both really homebodies. Like I was saying before, we don't go out. We never really went out to eat a lot or do a lot of social activities. So the changes from, you know, sheltering at home to just taking precautions now that those orders are over were never really difficult or stressful for us. And like with the holidays, our favorite holidays are when the two of us can just spend a day or two alone together, not working, cooking. So it's been really easy for us personally to handle the changes that this past year has required. And in terms of Right On, we have, of course, moved everything online. All of our programming is virtual. And again, we're in a fortunate place as a small organization devoted to writing that our programs can adapt easily to an online setting, much more so than I thought was possible. I mean, when we first started, one of my board members was strongly encouraging doing online learning in addition to in-person programming. And I was not for it because I just love the in-person experience. And I also thought, well, you know, we have to, from what I knew about the online programs that we had started at the Loft, was that it was really expensive. You had to have a great technology background in order to make sure that the platforms were working correctly. And that is not me, and I did not want to do that at all. But since we've had to do classes and readings on Zoom, it's worked really well for us, and it's a really easy system. And we've been able to get participants in our program from all around the country, people that we would never have been able to reach before. So that has been wonderful. And as a result of that, we were able to start a new program, a collaboration with a writer's residency program in New South Wales, Australia. And we've had 2 programs with them and are planning a third one for April, a 2-week-long virtual residency program in which 3 of our past writers in residence and 3 of their writers have a virtual residency together, with exchanging work and critiquing work and visiting with a prominent American and Australian author. And that's just been amazing, because it's, it's sitting here in America, at least, we know so little about what is happening in the arts and literature worlds of other English-speaking countries, let alone the non-English-speaking ones. So to be able to introduce our people to Australian writers and vice versa has just been a really wonderful thing. I think there is greater attention to issues of diversity in Door County since the events of this summer. I know that being in the Peninsula Arts and Humanities Alliance, we've made issues of diversity a focus of each of our monthly meetings. I think for Right On, what we have done is, we did pretty well with the number of writers in residence of color that we would have stay. We had about between 10 to 15% of the residencies we awarded were awarded to people of color, and I'm happy for that. But it became more conscious decision in the online programming that we were creating separate from the residency program to really be sure that we had a diversity of voices represented in that. And that was diversity in many different ways, in, not just ethnic, racial diversity, but lifestyle and background diversity, how people came to be the established writer that they are now. I mean, there are so many different paths to becoming an established writer than doing the traditional MFA program. And we wanted to make sure that those viewpoints were represented as well. And also just stylistically, aesthetically, just to have a diversity of the ways that they approach the various genres. So I've been very happy with that, and very proud of we have the Craft of Writing series, which it takes place monthly for 3 weeks. Each month focuses on a different genre of writing, and it's been a really wonderful program to be able to offer. Yeah, feeling like an outsider. I mean, I think that's kind of always been how I felt. I was always that kid in high school who didn't quite fit in anywhere. And maybe that was, partly being in high school, knowing that I was gay, but not being able to tell anyone about that. And I attended a very large high school in suburban Pittsburgh. My graduating class was just over 700 people. So it was, it was a very large school. In some ways that was helpful. It was easy to disappear. I mean, there were some of my classmates that I don't think I ever met in the 4 years at that high school. So it was maybe easier to be, be an outsider in that large of an environment than it would be in a smaller school. But I think anyone who grew up gay in less accepting times has just always had that outsider feeling. And I think anyone involved in the arts has probably always had that outsider feeling, because, especially growing up in in the 70s, 80s, arts was not really an appreciated and a well appreciated thing. I mean, I remember talking to the guidance counselor at high school and saying that my passion was writing, and being told that, well, I had to apply for a journalism school because that was the only kind of writing that you could do. And that it was what I ended up going to college for, but quickly changed my degree because I didn't have any passion for journalism, but I did for writing. And so I've been able to focus my attention and passion since that time on the writing that I like to do and not in what other people think would make money. You know, it's interesting, when I was a kid, you know, about in middle school, high school, I used to look at my grandparents and I thought, wow, look at all the things that they've lived through and all the changes that have happened over their lifetime. And I'm not going to experience any of those changes. And good God, was I wrong? So, I mean, that there's so much changed. And I think that beyond all of the technological changes and advancements and how rapidly the world has changed since I graduated high school and continues to change, I think socially, where we are as gay people today, I never could have imagined when I was frightened to tell anyone I was gay. So, you know, just say, hang in there, it'll get better. You know, when I was a kid, I loved to read pretty much everything and anything, and I'm still pretty much that way. So to find one book, to identify one book that was influential or important to me is always a difficult thing. I think it's like asking a chef what their favorite food is or something, you know, where there's so much, and so much of it depends on the mood that you're in a particular day. I mean, I do remember some reading moments that seemed like that have always stayed with me, because I was one of those kids who read after lights out bedtime time with a flashlight under the sheets. And I remember reading Bambi that way. So, and I, you know, I think most people have read Bambi. And I got to the section where Bambi's mother died. Spoiler alert in case you haven't read it. So Bambi's mother is killed in this hunting incident, and I just burst out crying. And my family came running from different rooms wondering what the hell was wrong with me. And it was a very sad part of the book. And I never got in trouble for reading after bedtime. So I did start out in creative writing primarily as a poet. I did all of my graduate and undergraduate work in poetry, and was able to work with some really amazing poets, Marilyn Hacker, Rita Dove, Alberto Rios, and my passion was really poetry. And I thought, I'll never move to fiction. I'll never do anything but poetry. And then somewhere in the mid-late 90s, based on a assignment that was part of one of the programs that I administered at the Loft, the writing mentor challenged the writers in the group to take a piece that they were struggling on of their own writing, in whichever genre it was, poetry, nonfiction, or fiction, and write it in another genre. So I started to do that with a poem that I was having trouble with, and started to write it as a story. And then that sort of started becoming a novel. And I really enjoyed doing that. I put the novel away many years ago. I was still at the Loft when it kind of, I don't know what happened. I think maybe I just got, I remember that I was reviewing it with someone who gave it some not positive feedback. It wasn't that it wasn't positive. It was just like she found stumbling blocks in it that I didn't agree with her assessment of it. And I just thought, well, I'm just going to put this on hold. And then I, started feeling like, well, I'm working with so many writers who are writing so much better than I can do. So why don't I just focus on what I know I can do really well, which is administer and run the programs to help them. And the writing's always there for me to go back to. And one of the joys with being at Right On, being with a smaller organization, is that I'm often sitting in on classes and workshops, especially now that they're virtual, and getting that chance to write along with the other participants. And nothing great has come from it yet, but I think something will. And Kathy Greer at Tambourine Lounge Writers Night has been really positive in getting me to write at least one piece each year for the special Queer Writers Night that happens just before Pride. So thank you, Kathy. I don't know if I would get anything written without you. So the poets that I'm currently reading, we just held a reading for a poet that I really admire, Mark Wunderlich, whose new collection, his fourth collection, God of Nothingness, just came out last month from Grey Wolf Press, last month being January. So that's been a really good collection. I got the gift of Mark Doty's collection, which I had just missed when it came out. So, but the wonderful thing about poetry is that bookcase behind me, that's all my poetry books. My fiction and nonfiction books are over here, but that's the poetry case. And, again, like depending on what my mood is, I can just go and pull down a particular book for a particular poem, which is exactly the thing that I need that day. One of the things that I have just so loved about being in Door County is how collaborative the arts organizations here are and how collaborative the other nonprofit organizations are. So, we've been, the first month that I was here, I got a call from Tammy Musil at the Clearing, who was then the chair of the Peninsula Arts and Humanities Alliance, inviting me to this organization that meets monthly of all the executive directors of the arts organizations in the county. And I thought, my God, that's an amazing thing to have. And I remember that first meeting was October of 2013 out at Bjorklanden. And I got nervous. I'm going to meet with all these other executive directors. So I dressed up in shirt and tie and, trying to look all like professional. And I went there and everyone was in t-shirts and jeans. And I was like, oh, thank God, thank God. But it just, to have that group meeting monthly and sharing resources and information, that's just been wonderful and very helpful to me as I was starting a new organization and also being new to the county. And then I also got involved with the Door Community Nonprofit Group, which is also a wonderful organization that meets monthly. Of any nonprofit in the county can take part in it. So nonprofits, social services, education, you name it. And we've had a lot of really good collaborations result from that. I firmly believe in the power of collaboration and of organizations coming together to produce something, create something together. And it's easy to think, oh yeah, that, the arts organizations, they can work so well together or that. But I think that, some of the really wonderful collaborations have been not with arts or reading writing organizations, but other social service organizations. Or we did a program several years ago with the Humane Society for Kids, where we went into the Humane Society when they weren't open to the public, and the kids got to visit the animals who were there and create biographies for them and the life story of how this dog or cat happened to come to be at the Humane Society. And that was really a lot of fun, and it was The stories were posted alongside the rooms where the cats were housed or outside the kennels where the dogs were, and that was really fun. And we've done a number of programs at Scandia and with the Door County Medical Center, and with the wonderful program that that is happening at the Door County Jail with writing. Well, had been happening before the pandemic, so there's so many opportunities for collaboration, and people are really happy to do that here in Door County, which I think is wonderful. Probably a thing that most people don't know about me is that in a former job, I was a superhero. So in the early 90s, I worked for the San Francisco AIDS Foundation in their HIV prevention and education program. And one of the programs that we had was directed towards IV drug users, and it was a clean needle campaign. And this needle cleaning superhero named Bleach Man was created. And I was the third person to be Bleach Man, partly because I think I was largely chosen because of my height, and I could wear the costume better than some of the other people on the education staff at that time. And it was great. We would have these public appearances of Bleach Man or go visit neighborhoods where IV drug use was really prevalent and hand out little bottles of bleach and clean needles and education information. And little kids would come running up to me and hug my legs. And it was just this amazing experience of how, how a superhero, no matter what the context of it is, can make this connection with people so outside the world that I knew and that I typically worked in. And it was just a really amazing experience. I lived in the Bay Area from 1989 to 1993. So 4 short but wonderful years. Loved the Bay Area. Of course, I moved there in April of '89, and the Loma Prieta earthquake hit in October of 1989, and that was quite an experience. And my family thought, okay, that did it. He's going to move back east. He's not going to stay out in California. I did stay a few years longer and then moved not quite back east, but to Minneapolis, where I stayed for 20 years before moving here to Door County. I live primarily in the Castro area. So yeah, for those 4 years, I was all in the Castro, in the heart of the Castro, which was an amazing experience. And at that time, it was such a different experience than the last time that I was able to visit. The Castro was nothing like the Castro was in the 80s and 90s, and the height of AIDS activism and LGBT rights. And it's, that experience can never be replicated. It was wonderful. What am I going to have for dinner tonight? That is a good question. I'm not sure. I am Zooming actually at 5 o'clock with my 2 flatmates from San Francisco, strangely enough. So my very best friends, and one of the advantages of this pandemic is that we're connecting now more because of Zoom than we were able to do in the past. So that's been wonderful. So probably after, we tend to stay on for a couple hours and have a couple drinks while we're catching up. And so we'll see what dinner will be. It'll be interesting. I don't think I'm a superhero in the kitchen, though I love to cook and I do a good job cooking. My husband does more of the cooking than I do. I'm vegetarian, he's not. So if he wants to eat meat, he has to cook it, and he likes to eat meat. So he does a lot of the cooking. But, you know, at least 1 or 2 days a week, I do the cooking. Okay, I can hear him downstairs, and I was like correcting me. That's not 1 or 2 days a week. It's maybe 1 or 2 days a month. But I do love to cook. I just don't have as much time for it as I did in the past. But that's why, like, those holiday breaks when the two of us can just cook all day together in the kitchen are wonderful.